Hey everyone, been a while since I have live streamed. Not that I'm actually planning on making this a long one, because, well, circumstances will prevent me from doing this again. But I was thinking that before this year end to do it a little bit more in December, as I have yet to do some of the others. So this time I'm just gonna go around and talk a little bit about Black Clover, including some theories that I once upon a time listened to. First of all, we're going to talk about the fact that we're going to talk a little bit about the YouTube community as well, because recently I heard, although it was a long time ago, I heard recently that one of the best Black Clover theorist, Pale Ranger's account in YouTube was somehow terminated. I do not know the reason, but I was greatly upset that that happened. If it was YouTube who did that, because apparently he broke some, well, copyrights and stuff, then I will have to say that. Then I have to say to them, is one of the reason why I hate rules. You just can't have any freedom nowadays. Again, I don't know the reason, but if anybody do know, feel free to tell me, including you, Pale, if you by any chance are seeing this, because some, if I manage to talk some theories, most of them are yours that I heard a long time ago. But first of all, second of all, let's me, the angry anime fan, the despair viewer, talk a little bit about this. Okay, everybody, Black Clover. What is Black Clover? And no, I'm not saying what is the series, what is going on, and blah 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 blah. No, I'm not talking about that. What is Black Clover? For so many people, Black Clover is nothing more than an unoriginal show, which, by the way, I will have to give them the middle finger and say, unoriginal. People, do you have any idea how difficult it is to find originality nowadays? I do, and it's kind of difficult anyway. First, second of all, Black Clover is not meant to be the best thing out there. Quite frankly, what is the best thing out there right now? For a very long time, that was One Piece. Then came the Dressrosa arc, and some people began to waver. And then came the Whole Cake Island arc, and even I began to waver. And I had been, up until then, a devoted fan of it all. But then again, what is it that makes people waver, so to speak? It may be disappointment that it didn't turn out the way you hoped. For me, the Whole Cake Island was just like that. But this is a Black Clover discussion, not a One Piece. My point on all of that talking, if it really is a point, is the fact that people have high expectations. And sometimes you should not have those expectations because they are gonna get crushed eventually. Nor should you just criticize a series if it has too many cliche moments. Even the best series will eventually do something you do not agree with. There is no such thing as perfection in a series, or in a book for that matter. So what I'm trying to say is Black Clover is not perfect. It is not bad, though. It is, yes, simply something, a casual read that has developed into its own action-filled moments of emotion and action, so to speak. So if you like that, then you like that. If you don't like that, then you don't like that. It takes a long time to fall into Black Clover. Because actually, for me, I feel like it's not really starting until the 8th chapter, or was it the 10th chapter? And the anime did not do Black Clover any favors either. As soon as the anime was was announced, a lot of us were really happy because, well, now it's gonna happen. But then came the anime, and a lot of people were disappointed. What was it about the anime that was such a disappointment? Well, there was the fact that the main character, Asta, even, for some reason had a pretty annoying voice. Which, by the way, I still hate to tell that because, I mean, As a guy who one day wished to do voice acting himself, I know all the way about the fact that there's some instances where you just cannot be perfect. So in the end, maybe that really was how Asta was supposed to sound. It's just that when he yells, he has a sound effect that many screamers tends not to have, which in a way makes his performance suffer a little bit more. And to be frank, I completely suspected the voice actor of Luck to be the guy who's going to voice, well, Asta. Because Asta was the kind of character I always expected to have a very feminine looking voice. Although Luck's voice actor is not female, despite popular beliefs. So yeah, I mean, there was that, and also is the fact that some of the cast is not really that original. There are new stars on it, especially Astas and Wells. They are, and of course Magna. There are many of those who are not exactly well known, so this could be considered their parts. Are there any good? Well, Noelle is really hitting it herself. But again, all of that is preferring. Black Clover anime is definitely not completely good. It's just, you just have to get used to it, or just watch the parts that are supposed to be good. It also doesn't help that Black Clover anime actually got, always keep on going, the type of mode days where you where it keeps on going despite it's having already reached the limit of episode it was supposed to have, because that means it will very soon catch up to the manga, and manga is not that far behind either. Other thing we can talk about in the Black Clover is the fact that some things are very repetitive, but in the end they have also evolved into their own types of charm. The type of charm where you see, this is what I like, and it has a stellar sense of action. In fact, even Black Clover in the end of last year, or no, maybe at the beginning of this year, pulled something no one expected them to do: ultimate despair. And if there's anything I've learned from people, is that people love a despair. There's nothing they like more than despair, for some idiotic reason. So after that, I think the fans of Black Clover has just increased. But the thing is, though, is it still good enough? Well, who knows? For me, currently Black Clover is very enjoyable and has been a very good read this 2018. Has it been the best manga of 2018? Well, for me, maybe, yeah. Maybe it has. I mean, it's rivaled by one other series, but that series was premiered in the summer, so technically it doesn't count. So let's dive into another thing of it all, and I highly doubt anyone is watching this. But if some miracle someone is that is into Black Clover, expect heavy spoilers ahead, and I assume you have read the manga up until now, at least up until this date. Sunday the 18th, I think. I presume you have read. So let's dive into some fears that are originally not mine. First of all, the symbol of the elves. When the elves came into the scene, they have all been drowning us with extreme words such as hate, despair, and all that stuff, given what humanity has talked to them about. I mean, what they did to them. But what exactly are the elves really? I mean, what do they represent? Pale Ranger once upon a time did a theory, I think, where he considered the elves symbol for Christianity. Maybe I'm getting that wrong, but a religious theme to it all. And he pulled some very nice moments, and unfortunately I don't really remember all of them. I'm very sorry about that. But I do remember one thing. The demons and the elves, there is a connection. Definitely a connection. But we still haven't gotten an answer exactly what that type of connection is. The connection goes something like this. The elves were people loved by Mana that were eventually killed by humans. That is the story we know, and so far it appears to be true. The humans pulled a story that the elves were demons that were hungry for mana, wanted their own, and their leaders summoned forth a demon that the first Sorcerer's Emperor stopped. So far, it appears that the human story is a lie. Given the fact that nobles are selfish people, it is only logical that they will fabricate the truth. But I still answer, why? Why were they willing to put that truth of it all? Did they do that just to demean the elves so badly? Or was there some truth in that story? What I'm trying to say is it possible that the demon and the elves are the same people? Because when the elves fall into despair, their mana seems to become very wicked, very evil. It's been lampshaded dozens of times in the manga chapters. But when the elves really become angry and really fall into despair, it's worth noting that a lot of the characters seems to scream that their mana is getting foul, and that their souls are suffering, and that they're becoming something other than an elf. Which seems to suggest that an elf can become a demon. Because when Lich's people were killed right before him, the last thing we saw was him apparently activating a forbidden magic, holding his wife as he cried out in the sky in despair. And the one who stopped that demon, the demon that apparently was real, was the first Sorcerer's Emperor, who was friends with Lich. So is it possible that the despair of seeing his wives and all his entire people right before him drove Lich to complete despair madness, and he turned into that one demon? The one demon that the fourth Sorcerer's Emperor had to stop, and eventually the story was fabricated that way by the nobles. I mean, there is no proof on all of this. And what I'm trying to say proof is, why is it that if the elves really can become the demons, then I want to know why. They always point out that they're loved by mana, and they had to indeed have a large reserve of mana, more than any other human being. But why? Why are they loved by mana? And if they're loved by mana, then why can they turn into these so-called demons if they fall into despair? Because when they do, their mana became wicked. And I actually have a theory about that. I don't know if this originally is mine, but it's like this. The elves say they're loved by mana, and maybe that is true. Humans are not exactly that loved by mana, but they have sometimes strong of them all. Yet, for some reason, they apparently cannot become crazy with mana when they become crazy. So is it possible that the elves are loved by mana but also possessed by it? Do you know what I'm trying to say in that moment? Well, what I'm trying to say is perhaps the elves are so loved by mana that if they lose control of their emotion, their mana takes over them, overlasts their emotion, and then transform their bodies into a being of pure mana, aka a demon. Is that the truth of the story of it all? And is that why the humans are not really loved by mana? Because they cannot turn into those evil demon beings. Because they are part of, well, the living beings are like that. Recent chapters have even suggested that the elves has a god, something that has been pointed out in a very old chapter, a very long time ago. Although I don't really know which chapter that was, but it was pointing out. So this is the first time we have heard religion. As I said before, there is some Christianity themes to these elves. The fact of being dead and then reborn. Also how they crucified Mimosa before. But what I'm trying to say is, if they have a god, then where had that god been until all this time? Is it possible that it was the god who killed the elves? Worth noting, the elves' mana was sealed, and then light magic went to strike them. So far, we haven't seen a single human having the power to seal magic. No, seriously, no human has that kind of power yet to seal magic. So what is the connection there, really? Also, apparently, a long time ago, the humans and elves formed a pact which told the humans to watch over this kingdom of the shadows, which is apparently hell. And why? Why is that? Is this pact when Lich and the First Sorcerer's Emperor became friends, or is this very long ago? Also worth noting in godding is a long time ago the elves were worshipped as gods by the people, until they eventually turned against them. Why? Why did they turn against them? Was it pure jealousy? Was it pure fear? Or was it simply that the elves were not as big saviors as they considered themselves to be? Because so far it appears that no elf is really consumed by, their greed, except their hatred right now. And they all consider themselves spiritually awakened beings, beings who never really had any hatred in their hearts. Yet now they have nothing but hatred in their hearts. It's difficult to formulate the words what I'm trying to say here, but what I'm trying to say is, are the elves really that saintful? Are they tragic villains? Or is it possible that a very long time ago the elves were mad with power and did control the humans with their powers? And the humans only rebelled because they didn't want to serve under a god, under something like else. And the elves then retreated when the humans grew in number. In fact, why is it that humanity has grown in numbers and else hasn't? That's another question. Is it very difficult for elves to reproduce? Oh, that kind of word is kind of difficult, kind of disgusting to say, but yeah. Why is it that the elves are few? Is it possible that a lot of them were killed during a long time ago, before all this? And also for some reason they apparently hasn't been growing in numbers either. So there is just something there that is not making sense. There is something that is left behind in all of this clue. Are the elves really tragic villains? Or is it possible that once upon a time they were villains, it's just that they have forgotten? Because if the humans were to guard the kingdom of shadows, why did the elves give them that power? And why are these so-called followers of Sephiroth the ones that can open it? What's so special about some kind of followers? There is just something that does not make sense in the story, and that is causing me endless amount of frustration. It's also worth noting that when Luck was freed, he called the magic that was possessing the elves, that possessing him and the elf, a very sad magic. So is it possible that their hatred is fueled by this forbidden magic that was caused for them to be revived? And that is not really their real emotion? And why is it that their forbidden magic is causing them to become so evil? Is it really their own opinions or is it not? Killing all humans will not make a difference to everything they have been suffering from, but they do not care about that. Also, why was it that humans were reborn with an elf inside of themselves? Was that thanks to Lich's magic, or was it something else? And now let's go to another thing about that theory. The story about Lich, the leader himself. So it apparently, long time ago, if we're going for what the story is true, long time ago, Elf Lich saw his comrades and his wife killed right before him. The despair drove him over the edge and he turned into a demon that the first Sorcerer's Emperor killed. That is the story we can assume. A long time ago, later, Patri somehow found his souls, or pieces of his soul, and then created an artificial body, which when the elves were reincarnated would fully integrate with him. And yet for some reason Lich is not repressive, he's not responding a lot. Only one time has he done that, and that was when he saw the deceased loved ones. And when he said to Raya that the grimoire that Asta had was no longer his, why is it that it's no longer his? Because a human has touched it, or because of something else? Do you all remember the fight against Asta and Juno? He dominated that fight, making it very likely that Lich could very well be the final antagonist here, the ultimate being of mana. And yet there's something about that fight that is not making sense to me. Did he do that all on purpose? Or is it just a coincidence? And what I'm trying to say is that when he fought, when Asta was trying to deal that blow on him, he parried it with his sword, dropped it, and Asta took it. But when he did, Lich immediately just fired a sword beam, and then just told Raya that the grimoire was no longer his, almost like, let's forget about him and let's just go. So what I'm trying to say is, did he want Asta to take that sword? Because that sword is the only thing that gives the humans the ability to dispel the elf's possession over the human hosts, which recently has turned out that if the ritual is successful, the human souls inside the elves will vanish and the elves will fully be awakened, meaning that they have to be stopped now, or it's nothing, or they cannot return their allies. I wonder. I really do wonder. Also, so what I'm trying to say is, have Lich done all of this just because he is currently in the position he is, or is it possible that he has other motives of it all? There are three options I can put through all of this. The first is that Lich is like every other elf, consumed by despair and want to kill the humans. It's just that it takes a very long time for his soul to connect to this artificial body that was his, just like the others say. That is the most logical solution. 2, this Lich soul is more damaged than the others. Note, he was the only one that survived the massacre, and he cast the reviving forbidden magic. So what I'm trying to say is it possible that his soul is in bigger despair than any of his other elves? And it's very likely that he's just using all of this not to kill the humans only, but to kill all life in existence. Think about it. If these elves have the power now to remove the human souls and kill the humans, isn't it possible that it's the same can happen to them? So isn't it likely that Lich has just fallen in such despair that he doesn't care who dies? He just wants to kill everything in the world, including himself, because that's just how much in tragedy he feels like he is. Is it like that? Or 3, this elf Lich is feeling that the humanity needs to have a chance and is secretly helping them. Feels very unlikely, but I wish it was like that. Those are some of the theories that are out there. No one is really can be proven, but it's just that in order to stop the elves, the followers of Sephiroth has to be stopped. It's not exactly confirmed though if it's enough to stop just one, or if they have to stop everyone. Just recent chapters seems to suggest that Patri gathered all of the the Golden Dawn people because he knew there were elves, which meant he knew that Juno was an elf as well. Then why is it that Juno hasn't been showing his elf side yet? Does he really have that much willpower? Or is it possible that it's just someone else inside that soul? That it's just Juno, but with elf power? And that's why it's unrepensive. There's some theories out there, especially on Twitter. Someone wrote to me that said that it could very well be the guy sitting in the elf table who had the bangs over his eyes. He does look kind of like Juno. And seeing that it wasn't Henry, maybe that is true. Speaking of someone else, who is Nero? The anti-magic bird, well, the anti-bird that is always flowing around Asta. He knows what the magic stones are. He knows about the demon slaying swords. Why? Why does he know that? Is it possible that he is the real Liched, reincarnated into a bird, or is it the first sorcerer's magic emperor? If it's Liched, then I just wonder why. Why is it that it's Liched? And is he helping Asta? Or is he just wanting to help his fellow elves? The motives of the so-called Nero is not exactly clear yet. Could very well just be a normal bird, but it's not a normal bird. It's something else. And what that something else is, we do not know. But Juno was always meant to be an elf. So is it possible that Patri tried to gather every single elf under his roof, but couldn't due to circumstances? Because the one and only person who wasn't an elf in the Golden Dawn was Mimosa. Then why did she become a member of the Golden Dawn? Was it because of her royal blood, or is it very possible because she looks like Teta, the wife of Lich? Is it possible that Patri allowed her to join because he hated Teta that much? There have been some suggestions that Patri was jealous of Teta's relationship to Lich, which, by the way, I find very disgusting, but I do find it very true as well. He worshipped Lich, and he didn't like the humans at the beginning, and then the massacre happened. I mean, there's some fears out there who even suggest that maybe Patri is the one who killed every single elf. You know, his future self did in order to do all these plans. But how did he travel back in time? All that stuff. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. And why was Patri reborn into the face of Liched? That is also something that doesn't make sense. There is some loose ends here that is missing. So is it possible that Mimosa was just in the Golden Dawn because she looks like Teta, and that was A, because Patri wanted to kill her herself, or 2, part of him always did like Teta because after all Teta was kind of sweet? No freaking idea, and we'll probably never know. Those are among those theories out there. Not exactly theories, but just discussion about the Black Clover. It's not a perfect series, but it definitely is not bad. If you like simple action, then this one is for you. And there are some moments there that you will really like about it. Give it a chance. Even if you feel it's too simple. No one said it's a bad to read a simple read. Give me your thoughts if you have any.